Welcome to another edition of Bobcat Breakdown, here on Q30 Television. I'm your host, Fearon, and tonight we have three very intelligent Quinnipiac sports analysts eager to discuss the past weekend of Quinnipiac men's ice hockey. First, let's bring in the savvy veteran, Nick Dench. Nick, how you doing tonight?
Fantastic. How about you?
I'm great, thanks. And joining Nick this evening, we have Tom Albanese and Marty Joseph. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, it's great to be on my own show.
All right.
Glad to be here.
Great, let's get to it. The Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team earned a battle with Colgate last Friday in the semifinals of the ECAC tournament. The Bobcats were up 2-0 on the Raiders before giving up late second and third period goals. Colgate went on to win the game just 58 seconds into double overtime. Union became the eventual champions with a 5-2 victory on Saturday. Guys, let's hear your overall thoughts on the tournament. Nick, we'll start with you.
It was a little concerning for Quinnipiac. They do need to finish those games out, and they missed 4 breakaways. That was my takeout overall from Quinnipiac. I wasn't too surprised the Union won. They've been the hottest team in the conference for the last month and a half, 2 months now. And Colgate's been surprising everybody. They knew they needed to win that Quinnipiac game if they wanted that NCAA tournament berth, and they did exactly what they needed to do. So overall, it wasn't an overly surprising thing. I think there's just a lot of more concerns for Quinnipiac going forward than the other two teams.
Yeah, I mean, from a Quinnipiac standpoint, I think I like what Dench said about the 4 breakaways they missed, and Pecknold really keyed in on that in the post game. He said that when you have that many chances, you should score more than 1 goal on breakaways. And even minus the breakaways, they had plenty of odd man rushes cutting right through the Colgate defense they couldn't capitalize on. But you got to give Charlie Finn a lot of credit. He played really well. They did get down 2-0, but they battled, and they just wanted it more in the third period. That late second period goal by Andrew Black really took the momentum away from Quinnipiac and towards Colgate. And then, like I said, in the third period, it was just evident in that last 5 minutes that Colgate was going to tie that game up, and they finally got it in that last minute. But you got to give them a lot of credit. But once again, Union just making themselves evident that they are the team to beat once again in the ECAC.
And Marty, going back to the concerns about the team's defense, obviously, as Nick just pointed out, they were not able to finish that game against Colgate, obviously having the lead into the third period. They obviously tied it near the end of the third period, and then, of course, they won, as talked about in the beginning of double overtime. This team has failed to finish games in the past. Obviously, in the Yale series, they did well coming into Lake Placid. But obviously, if you're going to do well, especially in the NCAA tournament, you need to finish games. That's something that the Bobcats have not done over the last several weeks, and they're going to have to definitely do that.
Well, guys, you're mentioning concerns. Sorry. Is it penalties? Is it the fact that they can't hold the lead? Is it the fact that Michael Garteg might not be playing his best hockey lately? What is it?
It's almost a tale of two teams. I mean, you look at some of the games they played this season where they go out and they just take a team right out of the game, and they scored 3 goals, jump out to a huge lead. That's one team that you want to see, but then there's other games where you see them play when they're not so good, like the Colgate and Cornell series. Even you can key in on points from this past game against Colgate. At times they weren't their best, and the 2 players that I look at specifically from this weekend are Travis St. Dennis and Zach Tolkien, and they had phenomenal series against Yale. Travis St. Dennis had 3 goals. Zach Tolkien really elevated his game with the absence of Danny Federico. The game against Colgate, Zach Tolkien's a -3. He missed a ton of chances in the offensive zone. He couldn't hit the net, and Travis St. Dennis didn't do nearly enough to be as effective as he was in the Yale series. So those are 2 players that I looked at the most that I expected a lot more out of, considering the way they played in that series, and they were nowhere to be seen out there.
Yeah, and a part of those guys, I think definitely we saw guys like Sam Anderson, Connor Jones, and Keller Jones, even Jordan Samuels-Thomas coming off the injury, really starting to get their foot in the ground. I think they had a pretty good series like against Yale, and obviously Sam Anderson, Connor Jones had the 2 goals in the game against Colgate, so those 2 really starting to really get their feet back on the ice and really do well on the offensive end. Dylan, my biggest concern has got to be Michael Garteg, because giving up 5 goals in the Yale series and then 3 goals in the game against Colgate, he's had trouble when there's like scrums in front of and right in front of him. It hurts his communication skills, I think, personally. And it's the type of thing where you have to use your eyes all around the ice, because you have to find the puck. You can't pay attention to the people in front of you. You need to protect the puck and stand in front of the ice. And obviously, he did okay in the Yale series. I mean, obviously, Quinnipiac's offense did well in the game to give him the series win. But in the Colgate game, that didn't happen. A couple times with the miscommunication with the defenders, and that's why definitely Michael Garteg's someone to watch for going forward.
I think my biggest thing is this team cannot win low-scoring games. They've struggled all year doing it. The only one that comes to mind is the 2-1 Union victory. They need to find ways to battle out and grind out those close games that they don't score 4, 5, 6 goals. Those are the games they're going to win every single time. It's the games where it's 3-2, 2-1. Those are the games they've been struggling in. And partially because they're not picking up the garbage goals to hit on what Tom just talked about. They give up garbage goals, but they can't score them themselves. There's really only 1 or 2 players who do it on a consistent basis, and that's Jordan Samuels-Thomas and Bryce Van Brabant. Travis St. Dennis did it against Yale, and I think that's where Marty's going for. They need to get back to those garbage goals. That's how they beat Yale. That's how they beat Alex Lyon. And now it's 4 games, essentially. If they can get 4 games worth of garbage goals, they have a much better chance of winning that national championship that eluded them last year.
And you can even go as far back to last season when that was really their team's identity. Obviously, the goaltending and the defense was huge, but they would get those dirty goals. They'd make plays behind the goal line, pass out in front. Jordan Samuels-Thomas was great at that, creating wraparound chances. Even Ben Arndt, I know he's not here this year, but he was good at that as well. Corey Hibbler's sort of taken over that role from Ben Arndt. And then, like you mentioned, Van Brabant's in there as well. They get those areas. They're always in front of the net. They're whacking at rebounds. But the last couple of weeks, we've seen Matt Pecker and St. Dennis do that as well. They've gone to those areas. They've used their size, maybe not as big as those players, but they've been able to get around and get into open areas, move the puck around well. They weren't doing that against Colgate this past weekend, and that's ultimately why they failed to win that game. And just going off the Gartek point that Tom made, we like to hop on this defense a lot for not clearing out the pucks, but it's gotten to the point where at some point, Gartek can't be kicking these rebounds out into the slot. You look at both, the tying goal and the winning goal were bad rebounds right in the crease, and then the other one to Spink was right in the slot. That's the area that you can absolutely not put a puck in the rebound. So if it's the defense just communicating with him, making sure he doesn't do that, or it's him controlling the rebounds better and putting it into the corner.
Well, guys, it just seemed like it was a whole slew of things that led the Bobcats to losing to Colgate in the semifinals. But we're going to take a quick break on Bobcat Breakdown. When we come back, we will discuss the men's ice hockey team and the upcoming NCAA tournament. Stay with us.
The Bobcat Shop, located at 1010 Sherman Avenue in Hamden. Your #1 choice for Bobcat merchandise. The Bobcat Shop features 2 floors of countless styles and colors. With a full 19,000 square foot screen printing and embroidery operation on the premises, Campus Customs and Simplify can design and decorate any garment or promotional product as quickly as needed. Stop in and say hi.
Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. So, with the loss, the Bobcats had to wait and see what seed they would receive in the NCAA tournament. Quinnipiac was awarded with a 2 seed as an at-large team in the tournament and will take on Providence College in the first round this Friday in Bridgeport. Both teams squared off in the regular season with the game ending in a 3-3 tie. Guys, what is the key for Quinnipiac in this matchup with the Friars? Tom, we'll go to you.
Well, going back to what we talked about earlier, finishing the game and defense, I think personally are the 2 biggest keys against Providence because, so let's start with the defense. Obviously, Danny Federico is back with the Bobcats first since the Colgate game. First game he came back with the team. I think Marty, another good week of practice leading up to the Providence game. I think that will definitely help him get his timing back with the defenders like Connor Clifton and the other defenders as well. So I think definitely the defense needs to hold together in front of Michael Gartek. And again, going back to what we talked about finishing the game earlier, in that game against Providence, Quinnipiac had a 3-2 lead going into the 3rd period, but Providence ended up getting a goal in around the 3 or 4 minute mark in the 3rd period, obviously leading to that tie. So they couldn't finish that game. They did well in the Yale series, but unfortunately they couldn't finish the Colgate game. So I think definitely those are the keys that the Bobcats need to watch out for, especially against a team like Providence, who is in the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2001. They're a team that's on the rise, and they want to make a spark in this tournament and show teams what they're made of.
I think the biggest thing you look at, especially when they play Hockey East teams this year, is the difference in speed that the Hockey East Conference brings compared to the ECAC. The ECAC is more of a conference that's built around its size and its strength rather than its speed. And you saw it against Maine specifically. They had a lot of trouble containing Maine's speed. You can sort of argue at times against the two games against UMass a little, but that was way back at the beginning of the season. So that's tough to pinpoint on. And even some of the mistakes they made in that Providence game specifically, it was the speed of Providence really exposing them, creating turnovers and going the other way. So that might be the biggest thing to look at. Their top player, points-wise, is Ross Marmon. He's sort of like a Jones or a Pekka size-wise, and he has a lot of skill and obviously leading the team with 40 points. So he's going to be a player to watch as well. But it's the speed, because if they can get to those open areas and create trouble in the defensive zone for the Bobcats and expose them the way that teams have found a way to play against them lately and get those rebound goals, it could be a long night for Quinnipiac.
Yeah, they're absolutely going to have to shut down Maurerman and that whole top line. Maurerman's been their best player all year. He's very skilled, but they need to finish. John Gillies is a much better goalie than Charlie Finn. Yes, he hasn't been the same since he came back from playing with the U.S. junior team, but he is still a phenomenal goalie for Providence College. He was one of the top goalies the first 2/3 of the season almost. He's kind of fallen off a little bit, but they need to finish their opportunities when they get them. If they get 2 or 3 breakaways, they better have 2 or 3 goals against Gillies, or they really don't have much of a chance against Providence, in my opinion.
I think the biggest thing for this team is you look at games where they have put up 4 or 5 or even 6 goals this season, they come right out and they shoot the puck. And against Colgate, it was evidence that they didn't want to do that for some reason. They only had 7 shots in that first period. Matt Pekka had an opportunity. He deked through one of the Colgate defenders and had a chance in the slot and elected to pass it back for some reason. So whether it's just the matter of the nerves being in that tournament or just at the big stage of being in the Herb Brooks Arena, I don't know what it was, but when you do see them, you see Connor Jones, the best example of that. Twice this season, he comes out and he scores a goal under 10 seconds of the game. That needs to be their mentality if they want to move on and beat this Providence team. Shoot the puck.
And even like the way that the ice is made, like for this tournament, for the upcoming series right there in Fairfield, obviously this is going to be a situation where the speed is also going to be tested in favor of against Providence, excuse me, because Quinnipiac, the way that they've been playing on their home ice and the rest of the ECAC, they're used to the way that they move on this ice, the way the tournament is. Obviously, Providence, as you mentioned, Marty, with the speed, it's going to be a huge test for them as well. And if Quinnipiac can score early and get that momentum early, Providence is a team that likes to score even in the second and third periods. They've done that more often than the first period. So they haven't always gotten off to the best start, but it's later in the game that counts the most for Providence. So if Quinnipiac could get off to that good start and their defense does well, they could definitely shut down Providence.
Well, guys, you already mentioned a couple players on the Friars, but what are some things to look out for when facing Providence? Who stands out, and how can Q contain the Friars?
Well, you know, I think obviously Gillies and Maurerman, but you have to look at their penalty kill as well. They have a very good penalty kill, and they actually have a player who, Kellen Jones, is tied for the nation's lead with 4 goals on shorthanded opportunities. Providence College has Nola Chari. He has 3 shorthanded goals, and they're a very strong shorthanded team as well. So not just Maurerman and Gillies, but you have to look at that shorthanded unit led by Achari as well.
Yeah, and special teams, obviously, it's a huge part of any team's game. Penalty killing wise, Quinnipiac the last 3 seasons, you can even argue, have been one of the best penalty killing teams in the entire nation. The power play struggled at times. It's been kind of hot and cold. That's definitely something to look at. But the thing that not many people think is that coach of the Providence team is Nate Lehman, and he coached at Union. So he knows how to play against this team. He knows what their weaknesses is. He knows what Rand Pecknell likes to bring. He knows his system. He knows how to play against it. So whether it's the fact of just the speed versus speed game, which we probably will see, but they know when they came in here in early November and were, for the most part, outplayed for the majority of the game, the exception of 2 or 3 mistakes by Quinnipiac ultimately cost them 2 points in that game. But now that he's seen that team once, he's definitely going to know how to defend against that. And I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, but I think the speed, whatever team's speed can benefit the best, is the team that's going to come out on top.
And I think another player to even mention that we haven't even talked about, Nick Saraceno, someone that on Providence who can really move the puck and have this speed, as we've talked about with this Providence team. He's the second second most points on Providence, and he's been someone that kind of overlooked in a way, that someone that not a lot of people pay attention to. Most people pay attention to Maurerman or even their goalie, as Nick mentioned. And Providence has a lot of different pieces, and if you can take out one, you definitely need to pay attention to the other one, because this is a team that can stay with any team in the country. And being in the tournament, as I mentioned earlier, for the first time since 2001, they're going to want to make a move and get to Philadelphia, somewhere that they or the Frozen Four, somewhere that they haven't been in quite a while.
Yeah, another guy to look at really quick is Derek Army. He scores a lot of garbage goals like Bryce does for the Bobcats. So both of these teams are very even. They have players who can match up against each other, and Derek Army is another guy who is really going to fly under the radar for most people.
Guys, even though the score was 3-3 and Quinnipiac made mistakes, it seemed like the Bobcats dominated the regular season battle. Who has more confidence going into this game, the Bobcats or the Friars?
It's tough to say. I mean, both teams coming off losses in their conference semifinals, but I think it's at the point where these teams both have experience. Share Providence is in their first national tournament since 2001, but these teams both bring plenty of playoff experience, both in their conference tournaments and for Quinnipiac's sake last year in the NCAA tournament. So I think it's just whatever team can move past their past weekends of losing in the semifinals. Corey Hibbler said it in the post game up in Lake Placid. They're going to just completely turn the page in this, and they're going to get back to work on Monday. So whatever team has the better mindset, I think, is what it is. But just going off the point of what they just made, secondary offense is going to be the biggest thing. They don't need to necessarily have goals from their bottom 2 or 3 lines, but they need to create some kind of offense, get some shots on net, and create chances from those dirty areas.
Well, it's going to be quite a battle on Friday night, but we're going to step aside once again. But when we come back, we'll take a look at the rest of the Bridgeport region. Stay tuned.
I could really go for a Ray and Mike sub right now.
Come to Ray and Mike's and try our Philly chicken with cheese for just over $4, giant cheesesteak subs, and mouth-watering boar's head sandwiches for as low as $4.75. QCash accepted just a mile down the road on Whitney, here at Ray and Mike's.
Welcome back. If the Bobcats can defeat the Friars, they will take on the winner of Union and Vermont. Guys, what are your thoughts on that game, and how do the Bobcats stack up against both opponents if they do advance to Saturday's game? Marty.
I'm sticking with Union in this. I think that they established themselves once again as the elite team in the ECAC, winning their third consecutive. First team to do that in 37 years since Boston University did it. Boston University isn't even part of the ECAC anymore. That tells you how long ago since that's been accomplished. But just by looking at Union up in Lake Placid, they look like they're a team that's on a mission. In both games, they had 5 different goal scorers in both games, 10 different players with points against Cornell, 9 different players with points against Colgate. So they have the depth in scoring that Quinnipiac had last season, and they're firing on all cylinders right now. All 4 lines are creating chances. In that first period against Cornell, they scored 2 goals, but if it wasn't for Andy Isles, that game could have been 5-0 in the first period. They just look like they're a team on another level right now. They're definitely still angry about losing to Quinnipiac in Providence last year, and I think that they're going to ultimately probably defeat Vermont. Vermont does bring some talent. They do have a good tandem in goal. Both goaltenders, basically identical numbers, same exact records, but in the past that's never really worked in the tournament because you never know which goalie to really go with. And I look at Miami of Ohio, really the best example of that. The last couple seasons, they've done that, and it hasn't worked in the NCAA tournament. So I think that's something that works sometimes in the regular season, but at the point you really want to have a true number 1 goaltender. So I see Union getting past that, but ultimately I think Union's a team that's going to take this region.
Yeah, I definitely agree how Union has all the depth and all the scorers that you mentioned earlier. But this Union team, obviously with many scorers, and they're, as Marty, I couldn't put it in better terms, they're definitely on a mission to get to the Frozen Four and possibly even win a national championship. And this Union team is built all around, even on their defense, has been done really well of late. This Vermont team is coming into this game against Union with a lot of young talent. And their 2 goalies that you mentioned, Marty, they're a freshman and a sophomore, so they're just similar to Michael Gartic right now on Quinnipiac. And obviously Union's a little more experienced in that category as well. But the best thing Vermont has done is they've had a pretty good depth on their defense, and they show how they can really protect the puck. And they have a low goals against average as a team. Their 2 goalies, as you mentioned, kind of around the same numbers. So this is a team that can definitely play with Union, but I think Union's going to definitely come away with that matchup. And in terms of how Quinnipiac stacks up against both teams, Quinnipiac, obviously, as we've seen, 2 big battles against Union, and against Vermont, they have not seen them in quite some time, Marty. So obviously, we don't know what will be the end result, but it looks like Union's going to defeat Vermont, but I think Quinnipiac's actually going to come out of this Bridgeport region.
I agree with Marty. Union's on a mission. They have the scoring depth. Colin Stevens has been playing out of his mind for the last 2 months, and that's what you need in the NCAA tournament. You need a hot goalie. Quinnipiac rode Hartzell last year, and Yale rode Jeff Malcolm last year. So hot goalies definitely help, and I don't see Quinnipiac. They play too streaky, and if they hit that one game where they don't take shots, like Marty mentioned earlier, they don't win the game. And Union has been very consistent in the last 2 months. I don't see Union losing either the UVM game or whoever wins the Quinnipiac-Providence game. I personally think it'll be Quinnipiac. in a rematch of last year's East Regional Final, but I think Union takes that bracket.
Well, guys, heading into this weekend, what is the one thing the Bobcats need to freshen up or work on before the NCAA tournament this weekend? Tom, we'll go to you first.
A couple things. I think definitely with, as I mentioned earlier, with Danny Federico coming back into the fold now on the defensive end, he's going to need definitely some time to really work out the kinks and make sure he gets back on track with the other defenders. And definitely the penalty kill, because, and even like the penalties in situations, because in the Yale series, as we've all saw, bad penalties, which led to bad penalty kills, and Yale ended up having 3 power play goals, against the Bobcats in the series, even though they did lose both games. In the game against Colgate, only were penalized 3 times in the game, and they held Colgate to being over 3 on the power play. So you saw signs of improvement in the Colgate game, but there's obviously more work to do in that situation. So I think definitely the penalty kill and working Danny Federico and getting back in that defensive mindset, because when Federico was with the team earlier in the season, their defense looked unstoppable. Without him, it looked like they had a couple holes, and with him back now, they have to fix those holes, and those 2 things are definitely what they need to work on prior to the game against Providence.
I think a fast start is the biggest thing. And you look at their first game in the tournament last year against Canisius, they get down 3-1 to a team that they should have controlled quite easily. And if the time and time again this season, when they get down, they don't look good or they get a goal. You look at the Andrew Black goal against Colgate. They didn't know what to do after that goal was scored because it was a bad breakdown, bad communication. Pecknold said it was the worst goal they've given up all season long. So if a team like Providence, who's much better than Canisius was last season, comes out and builds a 3-1 lead, especially with Gillies in net, there's no way they're going to come back and win the game because their mindset just isn't the same because they have so many younger players. So they need to work on getting the fast start. Something else to look at would just be their defense. They need to work around getting the pucks out of those slot areas and out of the crease when the rebounds are there. Sure, you want to see Gartigs stop everything and not give up the rebounds, but they're going to be there time and time again. There's no way for a goaltender to hold on to everything, so you need your defense to bail you out sometimes. But the freshmen especially need to watch the way they pinch, because Connor Clifton and Derek Smith and Devon Tays are probably the 3 players that fall victim to that so much, but they're skillful enough to get back and cover on those areas. But if they do that against a Hockey East team like Providence, they're going to get burned eventually. And we've been saying it time and time again this season, it's eventually going to burn them. And I think if they can't do that again this weekend and they do get down a couple of goals early, the season's going to end.
I think it's going to have to be finishing on their opportunities. They've missed so many opportunities in games that they would have won had they scored on them. And the way Gillies played last weekend against UNH, if they can pepper him with shots, he's going to give up a goal. He gave up a couple really weak goals to UNH last week, and his confidence is a little all over the place right now. So you throw pucks at him and finish on the garbage goals. I've been saying it all day. They need to do that, or they're not going to beat a team like Providence, or if they do get by Providence, they're not going to beat a team like Union.
So, guys, with all that said, can we hear a prediction for the weekend? Scores included. Marty, we'll go to you first.
Well, I think that Quinnipiac certainly has the talent to match up against Providence and defeat them. It's going to be a low-scoring game. I know Nick said that they need to find a way to win a low-scoring game. I think this might be the one. Both teams are traditionally built by their defense. They both have pretty solid goaltenders. So I can see a 3-2, maybe even a 2-1 game against Providence with Quinnipiac coming out on top. But I think Union will defeat Vermont. Vermont will stick around for a little bit because they are a solid, scrappy team. But ultimately, Union's going to establish themselves and show how strong they are and win that game. And then I see Union taking Quinnipiac pretty handily, maybe a 4-2, possibly even a 5-2 game in the regional championship.
All right, now, for me, I think Quinnipiac, I'm looking at close games in each of these 3 games, Marty, and start with Quinnipiac and Providence. This is going to be a close game, and as you mentioned, both teams are really built on their defense, and they definitely can both score when the time counts. So Quinnipiac, I have them defeating Providence 3-2. Obviously, in the other game between Union and Vermont, you just touched upon it. I think Vermont will stay in the game for maybe the first 2 periods against Union, but Union, I think, will come out with a decent victory. I have them around a 2-1 victory. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, but Vermont, as I talked about earlier, they've been built on their defense, and I think Union may be given a couple surprises maybe by Vermont, and we'll have to see how that goes down. But as I talked about earlier, everyone's been saying how good Union's been in the ECAC. Well, Quinnipiac's been doing pretty well, too. Obviously, in the latter stages of the season, it may not have been that good, but I think Quinnipiac is going to come out on top and beat Union. And I have that a 4-3 victory. Again, another close game. And I have Quinnipiac going to Philadelphia, going to the Frozen Four for the second consecutive year.
Yeah, I think we all have the same score for the Quinnipiac Providence game. I have that as a 3-2 win for Quinnipiac. For Union, I think they're going to win that Vermont game pretty handily. I have that at about a 4-1, 4-2 game. And then I think Union beats Quinnipiac on Saturday. Union's just been too consistent. They haven't shown too many holes lately. I think they win that game 4-2 and go on to Philadelphia for their second Frozen Four in 3 years.
So we got Marty and Nick picking Union to go to Philadelphia, and we have Tom picking the Bobcats to head to the Frozen Four. Okay, so now we have the East Region predictions. Let's hear who else you guys like going to Philly for the Frozen Four.
I don't like Boston College personally. I think they're going to lose to UMass Lowell in that regional final. I think Colgate is going to surprise people out in that Wisconsin region. I think that they're going to come out of their 2 ECAC teams once again. And for the other one, I got to go Minnesota. That's probably the easiest bracket for the 1 seed.
I like some of the points that Nick made. I think Boston College got exposed 2 weekends ago against Notre Dame. They found a way how to shut down that top line, and they found a way to get pucks past Thatcher Demko, who showed his inexperience in playoff hockey. So I think UMass Lowell team, the last 2 years, they've now won the Hockey East Championship. Connor Hellebuck, 2 shutouts this weekend in both the semifinals and the final, and they haven't given him a goal in the final in the past 2 years. So they just show that they bring their defense when they play big games. They can shut teams down. They absolutely dismantled UNH in that championship game. UNH could barely get the puck over the blue line. So I think that's a team that is just as motivated as Union is to get back there, because they know they didn't play their best effort against Yale in that semifinal game. So I think it's UMass Lowell and Union on the east side. And then I think Colgate's going to win that game against Ferris State, but I think they're going to run into trouble against a Wisconsin team with a lot of experience. So I think Wisconsin takes it out of that. And then I think St. Cloud State comes out of that west bracket against Minnesota. I just think St. Cloud State's returning a lot of pieces from that team last year. And once again, they know they didn't play their best game against Quinnipiac also. So we have a lot of motivated teams that I think are going to get back to the Frozen Four. So I like St. Cloud State, I like Wisconsin, I like Union, and I like UMass Lowell.
All right, now aside for Quinnipiac, let's go to the West first. I think Minnesota really still feels the pain of losing to Yale in the first round of the NCAA tournament last year, and I think they definitely have the determination to making sure that won't happen again. So I have Minnesota winning out and defeating St. Cloud State in the West. Now on the Midwest side, it was a little bit interesting because you have that matchup with Wisconsin and North Dakota. Obviously, those two teams have not liked each other for a long time. Wisconsin, I think, will come out of that game. And I like the point that you made. Colgate defeated Ferris State 2 out of 3 times in the regular season. So I have Wisconsin against Colgate in that regional final. But too much experience on Wisconsin's side. And I think Colgate, they've made it far, but I think that's when their road is going to end. So I have Minnesota and Wisconsin joining Quinnipiac. And finally, for my last matchup, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, we talked about BC. Their front line has been unbelievable over this season. But the experience of UMass Lowell, I think, will just be too much for BC to handle. And BC's been kind of going downhill of late in the tournament a little bit and in previous matchups before the tournament. So my Frozen Four: Quinnipiac, UMass Lowell, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
All right, gentlemen, it is shaping up to be a very interesting and intense weekend in Bridgeport. Thank you for watching another edition of Bobcat Breakdown. Once again, I'm your host, Dylan Fearon. Have a great night.